Hello and welcome to 24 Panels Per Second, the comic book TV and movie show from the Comic Crush. I am Paul, I think I am. This is tonight's episode, Fantastic Four First Steps, full spoiler podcast, so just be aware, guys, that we will, of course, be spilling all the beans on this film. Everything we remember from it anyway. It's a long, hot day and I'm hungover. Joining me, as always, is Liz.
Hello,
Liz.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm fantastic.
You good? Yeah, sorry, there was a bit of lag there. So you were like the ventriloquist dummy. I'm sorry about that. So I'm really excited to talk about this. The Fantastic Four are kind of characters that I've kind of only just followed on and off. I can't say I'm a hardcore Fantastic Four fan, but as I'm not really a hardcore Marvel reader anyway, but I have dipped in and out at various times, and people can find various reviews and things from EFF on the website, and I'll try and attach those to the comments to the description box down below. Sorry, I am really hungover. I'm sorry, guys. I went to a housewarming party last night and I am very, very tired. And I went to see the movie today and I was very, very tired. But I still enjoyed it. Liz, how about you? Like, what's your background with the FF?
To be honest, it's very similar to yours. It's not like a book that I regularly follow. They're characters that, I've read in plenty of things. Like I feel like I know the characters very well, but I've never, followed like an ongoing FF title. I've read previous volumes of things. Like I read the the Mark Waid run and some other kind of standalone, like mini series and things like that. But it's a group of characters that it's like I like them, but as far as characters that I really know a ton about, it's not really something that going into the film I had all these like preconceived feelings about how exactly it should be or feel.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like I've read. Sort of going backwards, I read the first volume of the most recent, the Ryan North stuff, which I really liked. I think he had some really good, smart ideas, and he also did the story almost as a series of one-shots, at least at the beginning, which I can't tell you how much that helps you if you don't know much about a bunch of characters, to be able to just go in and read like these separated stories that almost feel like they ejected out of the continuity, even though they kind of weren't. I read the first volume of Hickman's run, which we'll come back to later.
Yeah, because I actually that's the run I want to read in full.
Yeah, I think I've got the first two volumes of that, but I've only read the first one, the Solve Everything. I've read Mark Miller's run, or at least portions of that.
Sorry, that's what I meant when I said Mark Waid. I meant Mark Miller. Sorry.
Right.
Yeah, there was that 12-issue story from like maybe the late 2000s or something like that. But that was
And although I'm not overly fond of Mark Miller nowadays, I quite enjoyed this at the time, and that of course led into that whole Hooded Man stuff. Marvel 1985, which I just feel even for kind of those kind of short series actually got quite convoluted and messy, or at least felt like it did. I've read a few one shots. I've read some sort of mini series. I think I've probably got more stuff as we've all I've got more stuff than I've read.
Like a lot of my familiarity too is just them being in like Avengers books and X-Men books and like books where you've got like a full ensemble of Marvel characters. So I feel like I feel like I know them very well without having actually followed one of their own ongoing series.
And importantly, I think knowledge comes from, you know, them being part of the pop culture, which is important to this story. But yeah, not hardcore fans. We all know the origin. They go to space, they get, you know, blasted by cosmic rays, they come back different. This was something I was looking forward to. The Fantastic Four as film characters have gone through a bunch of iterations, which I'm sure we'll come to, not necessarily in this podcast, but perhaps in some other podcasts. Not necessarily successfully.
Right. I mean, there was, there was the movie from the 90s, the Roger Corman movie, which never really made it to the actual screen. But, it's like you can watch it now on YouTube and stuff like that. And then there was the 2005 Fantastic Four movie with like Jessica Alba and Michael Chiklis and Chris Evans.
Yeah. Interesting enough. And the sequel to that, Rise of the Silver Surfer. Which also features Galactus, as this movie does, somewhat differently though. And then there's the ill-fated Josh Trank version, which in some ways got it would have been better for that movie had it not been released, I think. I think genuinely would have preferred if they'd released the 90s version over that one.
It's a very weird movie. It's a very weird movie. I don't think we actually got to, I think it came out in 2015 and we started reviewing things together in 2016.
Yeah. So our first movie was like
Doctor Strange.
Doctor Strange, and then Rogue One. So that's when we were reviewing stuff for Orbital. And that, it's so strange because, we're now at the Fantastic Fifth version of the Fantastic Four, with, I think for a lot of people, fantastic being the operative word.
Well, it's the fourth version. It's the fourth version.
Fifth?
No, 5 movies. Fifth? No, 5 movies.
So fifth iteration of the
but no.
Well, because here we go. So this is the first argument.
Two of them have the same cast, so you wouldn't really.
All right.
So four.
Fifth for those that can count.
No, you're missing the obvious here, Paul. Iteration is the key word.
Well, it's the 5th Fantastic Four movie.
All right, let's move on.
It's the 5th movie
I mean, I am right,
to bear the title Fantastic Four. There you go.
Carry on.
Anyway, sorry, Liz, you're breaking up, but I don't know what's happened there.
Break you up.
Just going to temporarily, permanently remove you from the podcast. So, this Fantastic Four had a lot of expectations riding on it. I think it's safe to say we got probably the most interesting out there version of the film that doesn't really move too far away from the central characters, and yet in a lot of ways does. I remember a lot of people talking in Orbital when after the Josh Trank movie came out, saying, "Oh, we think there should be a '60s set Fantastic Four." And
I've been saying that for a long time.
And they should be moving. It should, and the way they could then bring it into like the main Marvel universe is to have them, go across to a new dimension. And indeed, here we are in this movie.
Yeah, 10 years later.
10 years later, and we're told we're in Earth 838, I believe.
828, and there is a specific connotation.
There is a specific reason for that. Yeah.
Yes.
Do you want to tell people what that reason is now, or do you want to wait till later?
Let's tell them now. It's Jack Kirby's birth date.
So yeah, in almost exactly a month, it will be Jack Kirby's birthday, and the movie is kind of quite lovingly, paying attention to that. And in fact, there is a very quick cameo in the movie. I don't know. Did you notice that one shot? We can talk about it later if you want. of, I believe it's meant to be Jack and Stan in the
I missed
film.
it.
So there's a moment here. We'll get to it. We'll get to it. So here we are in the 60s, a different version of the 60s though, that as the Fantastic Four have come back altered from their space mission, they have then altered the trajectory of this Earth, and they have altered the trajectory of technology, because technology has jumped ahead. So we've got robots walking dogs, which I thought was a nice little touch. I don't know if you noticed that.
Yeah.
You've got lots of little kind of
flying cars, we've got like like they have Herbie obviously, but there's like, I think there was an advertisement for like, a home robot, basically, like a
completely, yeah. So it's a retro futured version of 60s New York, and I found that stuff to be, although obviously artificial, you can't escape the artificiality of it, I felt it was really lovingly done, and I quite liked that.
Oh, I thought it looked fantastic. I thought it looked really great. Like, I thought that the
how can we avoid saying the word?
I know. Yeah, I was just like, oh, geez, this is going to be hard for me. But it did. It like, I thought that like they really kind of nailed it. They made it really look and feel like the 60s, but with those futuristic touches, like a little bit like Jetsons. What the people in the 60s kind of would have envisioned as the future.
Well, I think things like it's funny you bring the Jetsons up, because I think things like that actually owe a tremendous debt to the Fantastic Four. I feel like they're kind of almost undoubtedly inspired by this thing that kind of dropped in 63. Was it Fantastic Four? We get the first appearance of the FF.
61, I think.
Oh, is it 61? Okay, I thought it was a bit later, but the movie kind of, it still feels like a period movie, but again, I always think there's an artificiality to a lot of period movies because of the way people talk and they have people acting, the way they're dressed and stuff. I feel that now that there is a kind of sort of strange kind of I don't know what to call it really. There we go. Sorry, the
video just went weird.
Liz, you've frozen.
You froze.
Liz is frozen completely. Sorry, guys.
No, you're frozen.
Just the nature of my.
The audio for this is going to be really strange.
Hold on. Wait. You'll be back on in a minute. There you go. Sorry about that, guys. So obviously one thing that hasn't gone into the future is the bloody internet where I live. So yeah, I always feel there's a kind of artificiality to these things that makes them feel slightly forced, but I think it's inescapable when trying to kind of recreate time periods. I think it's just kind of, it's just one of those things. I don't know how you feel about it.
I thought it was done very, very successfully for this film. Cause like, as much as it was like, part of this beautiful aesthetic in the film, it didn't sort of really push any of that into the characterization in the story. It wasn't so heavy-handed that, they kept like banging you over the head with it. Like, oh, the technology's not the same, or this isn't the same, or, it was just like, these beautiful kind of little touches everywhere. In all of the advertising and, like little details, like the box of cereal had like the Human Torch, like as drawn by Kirby on it and things like that. But all of the character interactions were very, you're very just much present with the characters, and, you're not sort of constantly, kind of being forced to pay attention to the setting. It's just there and it looks great.
And also I feel like there was there's kind of, God, guys, I'm so sorry, the internet is absolutely terrible today. That it didn't detract from the enjoyment, as you say. Um, and also one of the things that gives you is this kind of artificial history. So it seems like it's the FF who've landed on the moon first, because there's like a Fantastic Four, a Future Foundation flag on the moon in a later scene, and there's also the idea that this, the space mission that actually gave them their powers isn't their first mission. But what it has done is kind of stopped them from reaching out and exploring further. And that I found an interesting kind of concept. So although they're kind of leaping years ahead on Earth, they're kind of getting ahead with the technology and reshaping the planet. They're not really reaching out beyond that, even though that's in their capability. This is the second film we've had in a row, the second superhero film we've had in a row, that throws us into the action, disregards the origin almost. Like, that doesn't bother showing you the origin.
Well,
you get kind of told that in sort of the quasi flashback TV special kind of way, which I enjoyed in this. That was an interesting kind of thing. But this doesn't throw you into an action scene. It throws you into a domestic drama scene.
Right.
Which I quite love. And also the thing I liked about that opening is that it's a scene of positivity and love. It's not, in the inverse to seeing, this is the first time Superman's lost a fight, which is a great opening scene. This is Sue finding out she's pregnant. And, I love that came from this sort of place of positivity.
Yeah, it's where with Superman he's thrown into peril and you're right there, in the fight. Whereas it's like this intimate moment, and it's also very high stakes for them on a personal level.
So they've been trying to have a baby for a while. Viewers from the podcast and stuff from the trailers and things will know that this is baby Franklin coming along. And I liked all those kind of family scenes. How did you find the sort of speed that the movie is going at there? Because there's a lot of like bang, 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 we're going into scenes, you're being told things are happening off screen. How did you find that in this in comparison to, say, Superman?
I felt like Superman was a really different film to this. Like, Superman was very action heavy. It was a fast moving plot. Like, the train was like moving ahead full steam the whole time. Whereas I felt like this actually, comparatively, you had a lot more, smaller moments, a lot more dialogue, a lot more, just, character interactions. That really are what you would want for a Fantastic Four movie. It's, like they're the first family. They really emphasize that. They make you believe that, with the Sunday dinner thing, it's like, oh, they do it every week, which funnily enough, in the trailers, there was, a kind of a scene that they ultimately cut where, it's like Reed showing a reporter like, oh, we do family dinner every week at 7 sharp. Whereas in this, they kind of show you that, without him saying it on the nose.
Yeah.
But, it's like Johnny, like, oh, what's up? They're late for dinner. What's the problem? And so they're having, their little domestic squabbles, but like you can, see the love between all of them. I thought the chemistry between the whole cast was really wonderful. And, I felt like that was very refreshing compared to, and I thought Superman was, this is nothing, nothing to do with the Superman movie. But in terms of like what we've been getting from the MCU, this felt very refreshing because it's so self-contained. It's a bunch of new characters in it, just they're completely their own little bubble for now. You're not wondering, oh, when are they gonna interact with Iron Man or anything like that? It's like, it's their story. You aren't really thinking about any other Marvel characters at this point, which I really like. It's like that, it felt so insular, and all of the drama just kind of, was surrounding Reed being a good dad. And, like so much of it was like these, smaller stakes throughout portions of the film. Obviously things get, flip around when Galactus comes into the picture, but
and like you're given flashes of their, like the previous battles and things that they've had, like the Mole Man and things like that, which was quite nice. And what's the name of the giant creature that comes out of the green? Is it? I can't remember what that's called now, but that's from like the very first issue.
The first, Fantastic. I can't remember what it's called, but yes, like that that famous image from the FF #1 cover, and that they spoofed in like a Domino's ad.
Yeah, and that's another thing that kind of connects it to Superman. Sorry to keep going on about Superman, by the way, guys.
Well, these films they came out within 2 weeks of each other, so there's going to be like some comparison, I guess.
Yeah, and there is a lot that they share, and one of the things they do share is this sort of very loving connection with the Silver Age elements of their comics counterparts, and it is very much, again, it's a comic book movie. And I don't mean that in a very glib kind of, oh well, don't worry, it's a comic book movie, so we can forgive any problems. What I mean is, it's like, they've packed in stuff in the same way as Superman did, where it could be like a good tight 2 or 3 issue run of the comics, and that's the way it's been done. And it's interesting that the two major movies of the 2 major superhero movies have managed to, it's almost like, oh yeah, we finally embraced the comics form, almost, in a way, which is, I think, it's been quite difficult. I think things like the Spider-Verse movies got very, very close because of the visual artistry going on, and I think in a way these have kind of almost cracked it on the writing side now, like these 2 movies. And it'll be interesting to see how that carries through in the next few years of superhero movies, if indeed it does. It could completely change in 6 months, when whatever the next thing is that comes out. But I loved all that kind of, even though I'm not on a conversant level with the Silver Age of comics. My period is the 80s upwards, but I'm vaguely aware of the touchstones, and therefore you feel that
you've probably read like FF #1 and a lot of those, like, for at least first issues and first appearances.
Yeah, maybe. And also I probably would have read stuff when I was a kid, because obviously when you're younger, reading comics, one thing you don't really care about is continuity.
Right.
Which I'm fine. I'm now going back to as I'm getting older. I'm like, I couldn't give a monkeys. It's all making my head hurt. And you want a simpler kind of through line when you can just pick up any issue because you like the cover or because it looked exciting, or and in a way, I feel like even because the movie starts you're after the origin, it doesn't matter. This has happened, then this thing happened, then this thing happened, then this thing happened, and this is the way the world is now. The movies have kind of embraced that. We're mid-continuity. And also, by the end, is the continuity even going to matter?
Right.
So, yeah, and we kind of build up the coming of Franklin Richards is kind of built up to a nice synchronicity with the coming of Galactus,
right?
Which I loved. I thought that was great. We get the Silver Surfer. Now there was a lot of there was an uproar really, but there was a lot of kind of consternation when it was announced that Julia Garner would be playing the Silver Surfer, because they knew it wouldn't be Norrin Radd.
Yeah.
It's instead Charlotte Bell, who comes from the same world as Norrin Radd.
Yeah, so in the comics, she was like his paramour. That was his lover who, he ends up having to in order to save his world. So it's kind of the same origin they ultimately give her. In order to save his world and, save the lives of, her and everybody else on his planet, he had to agree to become Galactus's herald. Yeah. And so they basically give her almost, an identical origin to him, except that she's got a daughter. We come to find this out much later in the film. We'll get to that. But in the comics, she, in an alternate dimension does become the Silver Surfer, and eventually they're reunited after, because part of the story is that he can't ever get back to her for, a long time in the comics.
Yeah. And although I was sort of initially bothered about this, and I think because I wanted from the first MCU Fantastic Four movie, I kind of wanted
Norrin Radd.
Yeah, the classic kind of touchstones. But 5 minutes into Julia Garner. I mean, obviously Julia Garner is one of my favorite actors at the moment. Like I think she's phenomenal, and I have loved everything she has done. She's an incredible actor. Ozark, which I think was an amazing performance, and she was by far my favorite character in that. And then I've seen like a couple of movies of hers that I've really liked, and just a very adept actor and brilliant in. I can't remember the name of the show now, but she did the show about the young woman who passed herself off as a kind of Eastern European socialite, an heiress, and Anna Delvey. So she did that series.
Okay.
And I can't remember what it was called now. But I loved it. She's very adept with accents and things like that, and she was absolutely phenomenal in that. And I think here, given a chance to actually do some acting, but it is tough through that kind of
it's like CGI, exactly, mocap and all that, I assume.
But as she said, she heralds the end of the Earth, and off the FF go to kind of stop Galactus. Not before her and Johnny have their moment, which I thought was a nice scene.
Yeah, and I think that I think it's interesting, the way they kind of gave each character, their own thing to follow through on it in the film, their own kind of storyline in the film. And Johnny's kind of has a lot to do with the Silver Surfer, and obviously he's like, at first he's intrigued by her, he's attracted to her, and it's like, oh yeah, Johnny loves space women, Johnny, like that whole thing. But it actually pays off in the end, and we, at the very beginning of the film, we don't know that this is what we're hearing, but Reed had actually recorded on like a gold record, these alien voices speaking in a different language, and as it turns out that it is the language of her homeworld.
Yeah, I think. Did you get the significance of the gold record, like why they were gold and things like that?
Well, a gold record is supposed to, it's like it will last forever.
Yeah, but I think it's actually a nod to the Voyager missions, which they sent out. Where they sent the record with basically like a speech and encapsulation of human history on it. and they sent it out into space just to go find whatever, which has been a feature of quite a few movies and things. Most notably Star Trek motion picture, and sorry, I'm just nerding out for the
go on, you know.
Star Trek motion picture and the John Carpenter movie Starman, to which it's used to great effect. Both of which are worth checking out if you're kind of younger people who perhaps have not seen those. But what I liked about those, it's interesting you talk about the each person has a story in the film and a thing to follow through on. All those kind of storylines, if I'm correct, are all based around family and love or romance and emotion and stuff like that. Like Ben has his thing with the school teacher.
Who is not Alicia Masters.
No, which I quite liked.
I'm just weird. You know, I'm like, well, would you really cast Natasha Lyonne for like a little throwaway role like that of like a random character? I don't get it. You know, unless it's okay, so maybe when they go to like another world, you know, because I looked it up, I was like, I've never heard of this character, and so of course after I'd watched the film, I was like, you know, Googling like everyone else, like, you know, Rachel Brosnan, Marvel, you know, Marvel character. She's not. She's just a character made for the film.
Oh wow.
Yeah, she has no, you know, so it just seems like a very, you know, interesting move, I guess, unless they intend for her to, you know, maybe, you know, if you know, the FF wind up in the mainstream MCU continuity or it all gets mashed together, maybe there's some alternate version of her that is Alicia Masters, or I don't know.
Could be. I like to think my headcanon is that they cast Natasha Lyonne because she sounds like Ben Grimm looks.
I mean, she
that
like
super unique voice.
Right. Yeah, I feel like, you know, because I think everyone going in kind of assumed that she was going to be Alicia Masters, but you know,
because when she steps out into the road to talk to him for the first time, I was like, she's not blind,
right? But maybe that's just on Earth 828. I don't know.
But yeah, I quite liked it. But they're all to do with emotion, caring, parenting, love. You know, which I thought was a fantastic thing to see, and I like how that's carried through. And also, what was most interesting to me was the fact that I genuinely thought what would happen is that Charlotte Bow would come down, say like, okay, Galactus is coming, you're all dead. And then there'd be like this big gap. And then Galactus would arrive. And again, just going by the trailers and stuff. But that's not what happens.
No, I thought it'd be kind of like the big crescendo of the film. Like all of a sudden you see Galactus's, you know, like profile in the sun, or, you know, but it wasn't like that. Yeah, as you say, it's like that's pretty. I thought they were going to save him for the third act, and they didn't.
No, and you do get to see him pretty early. And I love that they go into that sort of almost like, I don't know what it is, like this world engine, this kind of eating machine that breaks down planets for Galactus to devour. And he actually isn't as big as you would think, and certainly not as big as he would be in the comics. He's somewhat smaller, but you know.
But that actually worked, like, you know, giving it like the technology that actually he wouldn't just go chomp and eat the world. Like, you know, it's actually has to be broken down for him to consume.
Yeah. And I really like that scene with them going into the sort of devourer part of Galactus and facing off against him, and the giant eyes stepping out of the shadows. I love that. Very atmospheric.
It looked so, yeah, I mean, like, you know, because Galactus, it would have been really easy to make Galactus look silly. But they actually managed to make him look very, you know, imposing and very, you know, organic in the, you know, in that setting.
And I love the fact that he kind of clues them into, you know, what's going on with Sue. So Sue is pregnant. She's heavily pregnant when she does this as well, which I quite like the fact that you know, she's a heavily pregnant woman going into space, and as we find out, she's in the third trimester. She's ready to.
She's ready to give birth. Yeah.
And I loved all that stuff with the black hole, the neutron star, all this kind of.
I love that it was a chase scene, like, you know, it was, you know, and it wasn't really like a battle. It was just them kind of trying to run away from the Silver Surfer.
Completely. They get their asses handed to them. What's interesting about, like, looking at the action scenes, and there's not a staggering amount of them, but they're paced throughout the movie quite well. And in looking at them, we get to see, you know, we get to see quite a bit of Sue's powers. We get to see a lot of Johnny's powers. We, of course, get to see Ben's powers. But the person whose powers we see the least are Reed's.
Yes. And I think that was, I mean, personally, I think that was like intentional, because like Reed's powers are just kind of, they're goofy. They're kind of goofy. And they show you his powers, but, you know, they don't have him doing, you know, kind of, as much, you know, sort of stretchy fighting. With Reed, I think they treat him, you know, as he's, you know, he's the smartest man alive. You know, that's kind of his real superpower. And that's how I've always like viewed Reed Richards. Like the stretchy stuff is kind of like an afterthought when you think of Reed Richards as a character. You think like, oh, he's Reed Richards. He's, you know, the mega brain. And, you know, they presented that to you in the film, you know, but as far as like fighting, you know, he's not on par with the rest of them.
Yeah. And there is that kind of thing where he kind of backs. He's very non-violent, and in fact, the Fantastic Four are very non-violent. And again, one of the things I loved about this was and I felt this was very rooted in Hickman's run. It's literally solve everything. It's we're going to go out and negotiate peace treaties, and all right, yes, they're negotiating peace treaties with the Mole Man.
Yeah. So Sue is like she runs the Future Foundation, which you know, in this world seems to be you know, kind of different. It seems almost like a, you know, United Nations rather than a, you know, sort of collective of, you know, the, you know, most gifted and intelligent, you know, powered beings. But it's and there's like that funny, you know, little throwaway moment where you see the empty seat, you know, in the meeting with Latveria in front of it. It's like Doom didn't show up.
And also, I think that is, again, like exactly what those kind of giant intellects should be doing. They should be solving world problems. And I mean, obviously we know that's not necessarily the case, but I love the fact that they're kind of, you know, it's, well, we're about the betterment of humankind, the moving forward. And I think that so much of the film is about you know, they constantly battle things that are much bigger than them in size. You know, Galactus, the giant creature at the beginning, and I think what that kind of represents is the future. But the future is so much bigger than all of us, and I think it's rushing towards us, and it's coming whether we like it or not, like Galactus. And I think that that's what kind of the movie is about. It's just like, yep, don't be afraid of it though. We're gonna tackle it and make it small. And it's interesting that so, you know, I don't want to necessarily talk about the end straight away, but how the movie decides that the best thing to do with the future is to get rid of it. And
it's interesting.
maybe,
You kind of just brought that up, and I was just rolling around in my mind while you were talking about it. But like if in terms of like talking about scale and stuff, you've got like Galactus, and then the sort of actual ultimate cosmic power is the tiny baby.
Yeah, which is kind of interesting to deal with in the first movie. So Galactus once has decided that he'll leave the Earth alone if Sue hands over Franklin, who hasn't been born yet, and is born in like that sequence is wonderful. Again, sorry to go back to that, the chase sequence, and it reminded me a lot of the 2009 Star Trek movie, where Kirk is born as they're kind of escaping the enemy against a backdrop of a giant sun, and that is kind of represents a kind of ethical dilemma. It's can you give up one person to save billions? And I wonder if the outcome would have been different if the child had been older, like if it had been a teenager, or if it had been someone or an adult, would they have kind of been as ready to kind of go, nope, you can't do that. And also I love the fact that they display people to be exactly what they would be, where they're all kind of outside ready to throw rocks and go, yeah, give up the baby so we can all live. And it is kind of exactly what human beings would be.
Yeah, of course. And I like the way that Sue addresses that, ultimately, by like going outside and introducing them to, they basically, they're all ashamed of themselves when they see her holding this little baby, and like the reality of actually the idea of handing away your own baby, they as soon as they have to see that and reconcile with it, they're on side with Sue.
That kind of speaks to another thing in the movie, which is the all these things are given a face and a name and an embodiment. And Galactus isn't quite Keeley in this movie is not a giant cloud. He is a human, ostensibly human form. And he speaks of, I was once small as you are, and then the hunger came. And I don't know if they were ever going to kind of connect it back, because Galactus, if I'm correct, is kind of a celestial, isn't he? He's like
yes.
He's much the same as the giant beings that created the Eternals are, and the Silver Surfer is given a human, if you like, existence as well. We're shown that she once had a human existence, as you talked about earlier. And I think that's part of what the film is doing as well, which is taking these things that are utterly weird. The man who stretches, the woman who can turn invisible, the young man who can turn himself into flame, the guy that is made entirely of rock, and giving them a human face. And that's the key thing: is no one's disgusted by Ben Grimm. Ben Grimm isn't even really disgusted by himself. Which is
you do get a little sense of like melancholy.
A little, yeah, but
when he's walking up, Yancey Street,
but there's not. I think in previous versions that's very much been at the forefront of.
Yeah, they don't dwell on it here. They don't dwell on it. And they do a lot to show you Ben's other, like, he loves to cook and he loves kids, and he's, they show you that, he's very human despite his appearance.
And again, even though these things are wild and because Reed's power, when you think about it, you say goofy, but I see you're goofy and I raise you actually quite disgusting, and bizarre. And I think to a certain extent you're kind of shown that later on in the film in Galactus.
Yeah, that scene is very like, you know, like
did you notice the little nod to I think it's a little nod to that recent cover from Fantastic Four for the Blood Hunt tie-in, where all the vampires are kind of biting into Reed's face and it's all kind of stretching. And it's a brilliant cover. It's an incredible cover. And there's a kind of little touch of that in the movie. There's a scene, there's a picture from a photograph and someone is pulling like at his face and it felt like a little kind of nod towards that. Also interesting, that's roughly I think in some of the Galactus sequences is where you see the Jack and Stan. So there's a moment where they're kind of doing like a montage of people. I can't remember if they're like it's when the Fantastic Four return from space, I think, and you're inside this office, this tiny office, and there's this cartoonist working and there's another guy with him, and they kind of look out the window and they're like, oh, it's you know, they've come back. And I think that's meant to be Jack and Stan. I think that's the idea, is it's meant to be.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I like somehow I completely missed it at the time, but
judging by the drawings that are on the table, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I will be rewatching it very soon. I think I intend to see it in the cinema again.
But you know, we've all got a kind of we get to this thing where they literally can't figure a way out of the problem, and Reed is confronted with that thing where Sue kind of says to him, I know you've considered handing the baby over, like I know you kind of,
which like that is Reed. And I thought that I don't think we've really talked about the core cast and their performances.
No.
I thought that Pedro Pascal he really he broke type, I think, for this film.
Do you think so?
I think so. I think that he's kind of I mean, I think he's a brilliant actor. But I feel like, in previous films he is a little bit more cool, I guess. In this it's like Reed's, he's all struggle and he's all like in his own head.
I see what you mean.
And I thought it was just a brilliant performance. And I thought, I when he was cast as Reed Richards, I was like, oh, he's kind of too cool to play Reed Richards. I was like, that's a weird casting choice. But I was so pleasantly surprised. I thought, like, wow, okay, this is like, him again exceeding my expectations of what he could do as an actor. And you just see, like, so much of his performance is Reed trying to like outthink everything.
Yeah.
And I loved that conversation between him and Sue where, she was just like cut to the core that he would have considered it, but she knows who he is and she knows that he considered it. And he's like you mentioned before, he's trying to solve everything.
Yeah. But I thought what was kind of interesting about this is I didn't feel that the characters as written in the film were necessarily that massively close to their comic counterparts. Like I really didn't.
Okay.
I think there was a kind of edge missing. Like I think Ben was a lot softer than the comic version is in his personality. I felt Johnny was a lot more compassionate and again softer. Sue, I mean, Vanessa Kirby is an interesting actor to me. Like I really like her in stuff, and obviously most recently she's done like the last few Mission Impossible movies. I kind of liked her in that, especially Fallout. I think she was phenomenal in that. And she has an interesting kind of, I don't know what to call it really. It's not a flightiness, but it's a remove from the ethical kind of. I kind of get.
Well, she had the most sort of like, you know, like that moment where she says, you know, the Silver Surfer is coming for the baby and
kill her,
yeah, which was like very like jarring coming out of her mouth, like in a Fantastic Four movie. I was like, whoa, Sue, but yeah.
Well, I completely get it in that moment as the baby's coming. It's like, yeah, it's going to be her or it's going to be my baby, and
right.
you know, and it's interesting that it's Johnny's compassion that comes into play there, don't you think? And it goes beyond. It goes beyond like, oh, there's the hot space lady, you know. And I think what they got rid of in this movie is that sort of abandonment of the marriage that always comes with Reed and Sue. Like there's sometimes this thing where they feel like Reed, or you feel like Reed when you do read Fantastic Four, and certainly in the small snatches that I've read, where it's almost like Reed has abandoned the marriage really for this
His
voyage
lab.
into intellect, into science, into the future. Whereas Sue is very of the moment and wants, you know, the relationship and wants that to be in it, and that's certainly how it's played in like the other two, like the two sort of early 2000s Fantastic Four movies, which is also apparently very traditional to the way that Stan Lee would rewrite what Kirby wanted from the FF. Like I know there's like a, I don't know what the site's called, but it's sometimes I think it's sometimes referred to as Kirby before Stan or something like that, where they kind of show you what he intended out of the comics rather than what Stan Lee then imposed on them. Right. So I know that, you know, we're both aware that there's a lot of controversy there, which I'm not going to go into because I just don't feel it helps here, and also I just don't know enough about it.
I don't. Yeah, and you and I don't need to sort of really contribute anymore to that argument. You know, there's plenty of people doing a much better job.
Yeah, that's another thing. It's it's done quite a lot, but I feel that like there is this sort of thing where he's the cold, unrelenting intellect that's willing to leave his wife and children behind, and she's the loving kind of.
Well, I think there are iterations of the Fantastic Four, you know, that portray Reed that way, and others that, you know, really remind you that he is a family man and that, you know, family is everything. And I feel like this interpretation of Reed is very much that. It's like he's doing all the things that Reed would do in the face of like this impending pregnancy with, you know, these variables that he doesn't, you know, quite know what to make of. And he is, you know, he's you know, sitting in his lab, you know, performing every test that he can think of. And, you know, Sue is the one to, you know, sort of try and ground him back down. And, but he's all doing it, you know, for his family. He's doing it for the baby and for Sue and, you know, to keep his family intact.
And also, interestingly, like you have that wonderful scene before the final confrontation, Galactus, where Reed talks to Franklin and says, you know, and I thought it was a wonderful moment, and actually hints at much darker stuff, where he says, "There's something wrong with me. There always has been," and you know, I think the general thing is he wants Franklin to be better than he is, of course, as all people want, I think, from their children. And but also he says to him, you know, if you're going to be a space god, it would be a good time to let you know. As if the baby's just like,
that was really great.
And the whole sequence of Herbie putting together the crib whilst Reed builds the sort of cosmic testing equipment for his baby. And Sue reminds me, that was your job. You that's the one you shouldn't be shying away from right now.
Right.
But it is kind of an interesting set of dynamics. I think that Joseph Quinn was the real, I probably got the most fun out of his performance.
He was great. He was great. It took me ages to kind of figure out where I knew him from.
Yeah.
He's from Stranger Things, and totally unrecognizable. To that character.
Yeah.
But he was. I think he was a really likable version of Johnny Storm. Like the Chris Evans version kind of leaned into, Johnny's like, kind of a, wisecracker, little bit of a jerk, and
very much broad strokes. And I think this was fine lining,
right?
And
and I love the relationship they gave him with Ben. I thought that was really lovely. It's like, because in the comics they're kind of inseparable, and I thought that was really nice. I did think it was very funny at the beginning of the film where they're doing that little montage for the talk show where they're breaking, they're giving you that fast introduction to who the Fantastic Four are, they're like, oh yes, Reed Richards brought together the greatest minds of our generation. His wife, her brother, and his best friend.
I really like that. That's good stuff. It's interesting that they kind of the combativeness that you would normally see between Ben and Johnny is actually kind of moved over to Johnny and Reed, which I thought was an interesting kind of move, and that I quite liked. I loved, where they find out Sue's pregnant, and it's like, you're going to be the best mom ever. Reed, you're going to be the best father ever. Actually, I'm kidding. You're not. You're completely out of your depth. And I think Reed very much becomes the straight man for everyone else's
jokes. Yeah. I like it. Yeah.
And the kind of the whole the thing where he's never passed his driving test.
Well, they kind of show you that Reed's so smart that he's kind of dumb. There's really basic stuff that he can't do because he's busy thinking of these unfathomable concepts that are gonna futurize the world.
This is also a theory I once considered for Liz and the way she lives her life, folks. But I've since I don't think that's the reality of it. I'm just kidding. And yeah, I mean, I think there was so much to play with there. Eben Moss Bacharach is kind of like he's like the MVP nearly of everything he does. And it's interesting that in this he's not, but he is kind of a lot of the heart of the film. And
now, do you remember that he's played another MCU character?
Yes, he played Micro, didn't he?
Yes,
is it Micro?
Yeah, Micro in the first season of The Punisher.
Yeah,
and he was great in that too.
He has this kind of. What's really weird is again, overall, I think in this, what they've done is they've taken everyone, and you talked about this with Pedro Pascal, is they've taken everyone and softened the edges. Yeah. And that's really kind of interesting because normally Joseph Quinn, as we've seen him in stuff before, is very much a live wire and very kind of nervy and lives on his nerves. And he isn't that here, although, he is a bit of a live wire in this for different reasons. Vanessa Kirby always has an edge in anything she does. and here she doesn't. Like that edge is gone. Pedro Pascal, as you said, has an edge, but that isn't present here. Eben Moss-Bacharach always has an edge, but that isn't present. Like all that stuff you've seen in The Bear, which I don't
not
know
in a bad way. Like
no,
not in a bad way.
No, and I mean it as a compliment, which is it's quite an interesting thing to do. I always think it's fascinating when they take an actor that you know from something else and they go, okay, yeah, but that person, but in a cozy jumper,
right?
You know,
yeah, yeah. And they did have some very cozy jumpers in this movie.
Yeah. Oh, the fashion was great in this film.
Yeah, whoever did the costume design was just terrific.
It was the best I've seen in sort of New York kind of East Coast collegiate comfy fashion. And if I had the money, I would be dressing like that all the time. But they all look great. And I really liked it. I also really like the fact that we get I can't remember her name. Even I just saw the movie today. My memory is absolutely appalling. But the lady from Ted Lasso, who plays the therapist, plays sort of Sue and Reed's kind of assistant manager of the Future Foundation. She was really good. I've never seen her do an American accent either.
Right, yeah. And I didn't realize that Joseph Quinn's an English actor, apparently.
Yeah. He's great. So they had at least well, they had about 4 or 5 English actors in this, because you also had the guy playing Ted Gilbert is
what's his face? Gaddis, Mark Gaddis. Mark Gaddis,
yeah. So you've got quite a strong showing, but I think a lot of it was made in the UK. Like a lot of it was shot here as well. And I really got excited with the movie when they came up with the big thing is we're going to move heaven and earth. We're literally going to move the planet to some place where Galactus will never find us. And you're kind of, I'm like, oh yeah, this is going to be it. They're going to hop over to the 616.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and here's the thing. Just to interject quickly,
yeah, please.
I think I and a lot of other people were like, oh, this planet's done. Like the reason they're going to have to like go over to the 616 is because this world is going to get eaten by Galactus.
Yeah.
And it's going to be this horrible thing. And not what happened. We'll get to it, but not what happened.
And of course that what's also interesting about that is no one has any kind of problem with, oh yeah, we're going to shift the entire planet.
Everyone's like, okay, I can turn my lights off. Yeah. No problem.
Which is nice, because you would not get that sense of people coming together. And I think even if such is my lack of belief in humanity, I think if there was a planet destroying threat, there is. If there was a proper planet destroying threat that where you're going to get told, like next week, that's it. People wouldn't. They would just resort to the basest, worst instincts. So I don't have that sort of faith in humanity that Reed Richards has. But also just the fact that when you think about it, it's like, oh yeah, we're going to move because you're effectively you're shifting your place in the universe. Like we're kind of all quite assured of our place in the universe. I think that most of us don't think there are little green men coming down to visit us. We do believe we're alone. And really, we are quite small. And sometimes when I think about space, the cosmos, stuff like that, not to be too lofty about it, but I am suddenly kind of racked with this realization that, of course, it's all utterly meaningless in the face of, you're here for this amount of time. and you're going to be gone, and you and I are not going to see. Well, we hope we're not going to see. It's getting ever more likely, but we're probably not going to see the end of the world. But the world will end. Like it's a mathematical certainty. We know that if we don't sort of destroy it in all the stupid fucking ways we've managed to kind of come up with so far, it will just get swallowed up into the sun, and that'll be it. And the sun will expand and gone, and like that will be it. And I find that in the face of that, there is something quite calming to know that there is going to be an ending of all things, and that is that. And
right, but it's a little different when you've got like a giant world devourer, crouching above you. But
what's interesting is that you're faced with a bunch of characters who won't let that be the end. I mean, I think it would be interesting almost to see the movie where someone goes, "Oh yeah, actually, yeah, like yeah, that's it. It's fine. Like, don't worry. This is just the end. It's fine. This is just how it ends. We lived for as long as we could. We did the best we could. We went through X amount of generations. We made all this technology." Ultimately to no end, because
hasn't that movie happened? Are we,
I don't know. I mean, I guess it might have, but it might also be interesting to see it in this kind of context, but that's not what we've got here.
I mean, I think that for the tone of the film, I'm really glad that they didn't do that. I'm really glad that
absolutely,
like, they
I'm not
saved the day, and but I would not have been, that was a lot of people's fan theory was that actually, Galactus was gonna, devour this world and they would have to flee. But I like so much better that they don't flee and that they find a way to save their world. And
and also, like, we get we do get the expected scene of Galactus comes down and starts stomping on things, and that's
and after Silver Surfer goes literally around the whole planet taking out those beacons, and another really cool sequence with the Silver Surfer.
And we like I thought that was a fun little plan where they're like, yeah cool, we're going to just teleport the entire planet all in one go, and I loved that. I thought that was fantastic. And the scenes of Galactus coming down, and of course that great little thing where he grabs the tree out of its, he pulls the roots out of the tree and he's sniffing the earth, and Johnny's like, okay, like, all right, what is that? I like that they managed to get those moments out of bigger, literally bigger moments.
Like the fight, the fight scene. I thought I really like how all the the action scenes felt big and bombastic, but also kind of weirdly small in certain ways. Like because their powers, apart from Sue's, are actually not kind of mega powers. Like Ben's really strong. Johnny is more powerful, but he's not like, he doesn't have super strength. Apart from flying and setting things on fire, his power set is limited. But I love how they're trying to at least slow him down. Like, Ben picks up the oil tanker and like throws it at him, and then Johnny lights it on fire, but it doesn't even slow him down. And it just shows you how, how limited they are in what they can do, apart from Sue.
And also it's interesting that I think James Gunn pointed out, he's like, look, Marvel doesn't have superheroes in the same way that DC has superheroes. They're not like, the powers are, they're not kind of ridiculously powered the way kind of DC's powers are. I mean, obviously I think you can make exemptions for characters like the Scarlet Witch and Doctor Strange, whose powers really can alter the physics of a thing.
Franklin Richards.
Yeah, and now Franklin Richards,
who's actually more powerful than Scarlet Witch or Doctor Strange.
Yeah, and I kind of like the fact that the plan then changes to, okay, we won't transport the Earth, we'll transport Galactus. But what was interesting about that is speaking of the kind of ethics of a situation where, you know, Sue confronts Reed with, you know, you considered giving away the baby. The plan itself is kind of monstrous, which is, oh, we're going to transport him away to some other place, but we don't know where that place is. They don't know what's on the other side of that, or
where they're putting Galactus. Yeah, they don't know who they're going to inflict him on. Like, it's just like, well, you know, let's get him out of here, but make it somebody else's problem.
That is kind of monstrous, and I wonder if that will somehow play into whatever comes next.
Maybe, because we don't know where Galactus wound up. So yeah, that could be the reckoning.
The kind of thing with Secret Wars is kind of, I'm guessing Doomsday will actually be Secret Wars in a way. Like I'm assuming that that's what it will actually be,
right?
And it will be the Hickman Secret Wars. And as we remember from that, Doom. Sorry, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves here because you know, but I think it's necessary to talk about this as sort of nerds. Doom sends the Molecule Man back through different universes to destroy them and then build one big battle world, right?
Right.
Or build the planet that he then becomes the Emperor of. And I wonder if inadvertently that's what they've kind of done, is they've sent Galactus back and he's going to go and try and consume all these worlds. And instead what's going to happen is Doom is going to try and save some of those worlds by taking pieces of them and sandwiching them all together. I'm not sure that will play out. But nonetheless, we do get rid of Galactus in this. I mean, it's that great scene where Sue is pushing him back with her powers, which eventually kills her.
And she, you know, she almost fails too. He's like he gets pushed through, but then he starts climbing back out.
Yeah,
and which uses every bit of her power to push him through in the first place. And we have this really heroic moment from Johnny Storm where he's about to sacrifice himself.
I love that his kind of heroic can-do pomposity gets punctured by Charlotte Bow just flying in and pushing him out. Like, she literally is just pushing his face away. A bit like Liz used to do to me whenever we used to go out and try and find comics together. She would just push me out of the
firmly
way.
Out of the way.
But yeah, like I loved that, and that really made me laugh out loud in the cinema. I really kind of howled. So, you know, and also it's a nice touch that they have to go back to one of the villains of the earlier portion of the film and kind of ask for his help.
And I thought the Mole Man was like, you know, he was a very enjoyable character in the limited time that we spend with him. You know, it was very funny.
I think like a lot got chopped from the movie.
Yeah, and I actually thought that it was really, you know, like just the right amount of Mole Man. Okay, I thought that we didn't, you know, as much as I really enjoyed seeing him, I thought, okay, that wasn't overdone. Like, and he brought just enough humor. I thought, here's the other thing that I want to say about the film in general, is that the humor was not overkill at all. I thought that this was actually done really well. Like, a lot of people have been complaining, like, you know, it's all jokes. I thought that there were jokes, but just the right amount of jokes. There was a lot of heart and emotion and, you know, like sort of genuine family dynamics, you know, and I think that the humor was sprinkled on lightly instead of liberally this time. And I think if we had gotten more Mole Man, maybe it would have been, you know, you would have kind of started to feel it like, you know, okay, yep, they're veering back into this, you know, this territory that people have been complaining about and saying that they shy away from emotion. you know, to kind of drop a joke, you know, which, you know, people did accuse the James Gunn Superman movie of doing to an extent.
I think, well, yes and no. I mean, I and I'm not disagreeing with you that people saying that. I'm very
whether I agree with it or not is irrelevant. But like, you know, yeah, that is, you know, there is a faction of the, you know, viewing population who are just, you know.
But I think what both these films have is earnestness. I think they're very earnest in their emotions. So I think part of that comes from kind of being. I found there was a naturalism to the humor in this, as there is to as there was to Superman. Like I feel it came from an organic place. There
were a few moments in Superman, a very few, that I thought were like, you know, like the garage door and stuff like that, like, you know, where it was like, yeah, you didn't need to do that. Yeah, you know. I mean, you know. Like, I'm not complaining big time, but, you know, I could see where the argument could be like, oh, well, you didn't need to do that. But in this movie, I really didn't feel that at all. I felt like, you know, it all just was, as you said, like woven very organically into conversations and situations. And, you know, it wasn't humor for humor's sake. And I thought that, what is the actor's name? Paul
Walter Hauser,
as the Mole Man, you know, was really just like a charming presence, just very funny and, like, you know, obviously so pompous. And I loved when they had to, you know, show up and sort of try and court him into helping out, you know, the surface world. And, you know, he's like he's like, come on, Reed, butter me up, you know, and he's doing the little hand motion, and it was just very funny. And
also, I mean, the film manages to be quite touching, and they manage to get this sort of stuff, the family stuff, as we talked about, in quite kind of successfully. I feel that plays out really well. Like ultimately, the ending was very fascinating. So we get the sense through the kind of so there's two credit scenes in this, right?
Right.
There's one sort of early credit scene, and then is there one right at the end? There was another.
There's one right at the end. There's one right at the end. So you know, before we get the credit scene, of course, we get the ending where we actually, you know, have Sue die and be resurrected by Franklin. We get to see Franklin's power, that, you know, even as like a little infant, you know, he can bring her back to life. He has extreme power. And so then the first post-credit scene that we get, which is the mid-credit scene, is like a big one. It's a big one. And, you know, I wasn't sure what to expect. And I thought that with Thunderbolts, they had, like, you know, a pretty important one as their mid-credit scene. But the mid-credit scene in Fantastic Four was like, whoa. You know, when we got there, I was actually, you know, sort of jaw on the floor. So the mid-credit scene was Sue, you know, it's 4 years in the future, you know, from the end of this film. We jump ahead 4 years, and Franklin is now like a little boy. He's a, you know, 4-year-old boy, and Sue's going to read him a story. And, you know, you kind of get a little gag where, you know, you see like, oh, is it going to be, you know, this like, you know, Charles Darwin book, or, you know, some ridiculously high level, you know, tome, and they're like, oh well, no, we're gonna read, you know, Goodnight Moon or something like that. We're gonna go with something fun instead. And
I think it's the Very Hungry Caterpillar they were going to go with.
Well, she was yeah. Like, I mean, yeah, she was reading a Very Hungry Caterpillar, and I think that the book she took off the shelf was actually A Fly Went By, technically. I
Right,
couldn't
okay.
remember off the top
Sorry,
of my head,
folks,
but
the-
it's a book that you would know from being a little kid, especially in that era.
I'm trying to interject this just because I can see the computer is taking us out of sync a little bit.
Oh no! Oh, Paul, this is like
so I'm trying to
be a tough one. I'm
trying
sorry
to get it
whoever's
to catch up by. Yeah, I'm trying to get it to catch us up.
Yeah, I think maybe just give up on the images. We're back with Mole Man right now. Okay.
There you go. Sorry.
Anyway, yeah, so she goes to get him the book, and when she turns around, we see a green cloaked figure holding a metal mask crouched in front of Franklin. We don't see a face, but we know who it is. It's Doom. It's like, whoa! I was just, jumping out of my seat. I was like, Doom! And I was, all made up. I was like, oh, okay, wow. Like, price of admission right there. So excited.
So, yeah, I mean, it is an exciting thing. We don't know yet. What it doesn't do is tie up with that Thunderbolts.
No. I thought that's what they would do.
Interestingly enough, Feige has said that although that's the Fantastic Four's rocket that you see in Thunderbolts, the Fantastic Four may not be in it.
Okay.
So that's kind of interesting. I mean, we don't know what that's about. I think there's obviously I think it'd be stupid for there not to be fallout from Galactus being sent off to God knows where.
Right.
And I really think that would be a real wasted opportunity.
Yeah.
And sometimes I wonder if a lot of stuff that happens in a lot of the Marvel movies is done because the fans will jump on a theory, as we do. We jump on theories too, and then the writers just go, "Oh, we'll change that quickly. We'll do," because, and I actually think that sometimes that can work to their detriment. That sometimes it's better to embrace, what the fans are kind of expecting. Yes, there would be a contingent that goes, "Oh, there were no surprises," but I don't really give a monkeys about that. I don't think it's where you get to necessarily in movies. It's how you get there. I think that's just what the art form is. The art form is about execution, not destination, and to a certain degree. And yeah, I think it'd be stupid not to have like some kind of major fallout from all this, stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. Obviously, they've got a lot to juggle in Secret Wars, and who knows how it's all going to tie together. But it certainly chucking Galactus into an alternate dimension could have repercussions.
Yeah,
and should. The other post-credit scene is very throwaway, but still cute and neat, which was the Fantastic Four 1960s TV show theme that they, the show that they have in the movie. And it was really good. It was just very, that 60s style animation. And
but
and it reminds you, basically, we're reminded throughout the movie, that, they are these big celebrities. There is a cartoon show about them as they're, just kind of going about their business, and people keep, wheedling Ben Grimm into saying it's clobbering time, which he doesn't want to do. And I just thought that was really funny.
And again, it is fascinating the way this next era of comic book movies seems to be embracing comic books more and embracing the kind of kitsch of it all, and finding a way to do that organically. But I'm really excited by whatever comes next. It's kind of piqued my interest again. I think we went through a kind of very unsettled downward period And but I still think that period got a harder time than it deserved, because
Yeah, I agree.
all
There was
genres go through
transformative periods. Like, yeah, exactly. Yeah. They had just told this, like, you know, this epic story that had a beginning, middle, and end, and like, you know, the direction they had to take it also had to leave room for what they knew was coming, which was like the introduction of the FF and the introduction of the X-Men, and you know, all this stuff, all these Disney Plus shows and how to integrate those characters. So I mean, I think retrospectively, you know, it might watch better than it did on the big screen. And you know, I think that, yeah, maybe there were like some, you know, there are definitely films that I like better than others. But I think, you know, I think that there's, it gets too harsh a rap. You know, because it's, you know, it's storytelling that's being, you know, kind of dictated by rights issues and all sorts of stuff. So I think overall they did a very good job with how they kind of made that plausible and possible in their existing universe.
Yeah. And I you know, now that stuff's under the umbrella of the MCU, I still find it kind of interesting that they're kind of sticking with indie filmmakers who haven't done. I mean, Shankman has done a lot of television and a lot of.
Well, he did WandaVision. You know, like, I don't think we even talked about that, but he was the director of WandaVision, which also played with that, like, you know, that sort of 1960s aesthetic, and these different, you know, different generational aesthetics really well.
He did Game of Thrones as well, so he's done like big things. But I still find it interesting they keep going back to, because I still think that somewhere there lies that, like, I think they should get bigger directors in. The rumor is that at the moment they see Marvel and the MCU as a kind of bureaucratic company sees the future as Robert Downey Jr., which is very interesting. But also it is a future that's going to cost them a lot of money. And they've also been told, like Feige has been told, to scale back a bit financially. And I think there's also there's going to be a lot more kind of doing things for real.
Practical effects, do you mean?
Yeah, a lot more practical stuff. I think a lot of stuff in Thunderbolts was done practically, and a lot of stuff in Superman was done practically. And I think that might become a thing for a few years. But, you know, with the coming of AI, who knows? Again, I'm always interested to see what's next. But this I really enjoyed, and this kind of ends the comic book movie season, really. It is going to be kind of a while before there's something else, right?
Do we have something coming in December? Like, usually
I think there is. Wonder Man is coming in December. We haven't had the chance, as we sit here now, sort of it's the 26th of July as we're recording this. We haven't had the chance to talk about Ironheart yet.
No.
And I feel that is something that you and I should get together and talk about.
We should, maybe we could do a Patreon episode, or you know, or maybe you know, because when Ironheart was coming out, I had you know, big family visit, and it just was not on the cards. But we could maybe we could do a Patreon episode.
Can I just ask you, have you now caught up and watched Ironheart?
No.
You haven't? Okay. I
have not, and to my great shame. But
have you managed to avoid the spoilers for Ironheart?
Yes, I have.
Nice.
Yeah, because anytime anybody starts to open their mouth about it in the shop, I basically slap them in the face. Like, don't do it.
I've been slapped by Liz before. It hurts, folks.
No worries.
So I commend you for avoiding those spoilers. please, folks, in the comment section, do not put any spoilers for Ironheart and don't ruin it for Liz. But I am dying to talk about Ironheart with Liz. I am.
Okay, we'll find a way to make it happen. We have a bunch of sort of off the books, like commentary coming up.
Which we can't talk about yet because we're going to try and, as I'm doing with the Batman podcast, which is still going on and still being recorded. One day it will be out, folks. We are going to try and record some episodes before they go out for a sort of mini series within the kind of umbrella of
movie reviews, like comics based.
But we won't say what they are yet.
Right.
This has kind of been spurned on by one of our viewers, Paul Taylor, who we often talk about.
One of our beloved former customers at Orbital.
And we're going to be talking about some very particular comic book movies, but again, can't say what they are just yet. And Paul Taylor will hopefully be the lucky person who gets to see one particular episode before any of it goes out. Liz and I are going to talk about more about that when we shut this off for you guys. So again, sorry, we've overstayed our welcome. I feel an hour and a half. The older I get, the longer these podcasts get. I feel there definitely is a correlation there.
Yeah, you're slower these days.
Yeah. As is the laptop. Again, it's taken us out of sync. This is driving me mad. I've got to try and get this fixed for next time.
You do.
So, guys, thank you for tuning in and listening. You remember you can find us on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube if you want to see our charming faces, or at least it's Liz's charming face. And you can follow us at thecomiccrush.bsky.social. For Blue Sky, at the Comic Crush on Threads and Instagram, at the Comic Crush on Facebook. Find the page there, and that's where you'll get all the kind of the stuff, the new stuff straight away. That's where I put it first. You'll get all the stuff that's going into the web shop. Please do buy something from the web shop because that keeps us going. If not, please sign up for the Patreon, which you can do from £2 a month. Less than the price of a cup of coffee. Again, it helps me be able to do this. It is, despite the crappy technology, it does cost money to do all this stuff, and your help would be appreciated. So tune in next time, although we don't know when that next time is going to be, but it will be soon. Liz, thank you so much for sticking with this for so long this evening.
Yeah, well, hopefully Patreon, get Paul better internet.
That would help actually.
Paul's,
a bit more money every
Paul
month for the
buying
Patreon.
a dongle of some kind.
Yeah. It's ever since we moved out of London, like the technology has gone. So yeah, it's a very old house, and I think that's something to do with it. But yeah, guys, honestly, we love all the people tuning in and listening, and big hello to your buddies, Liz, Ken, and David, who tune in faithfully every week and do drop us comments on the social posts. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in and watching. It is appreciated. We do really love the Massachusetts Massive, and we're really thrilled that you guys tune in. If you've got anything to say about the Fantastic Four movie, drop it in the comments section. Tell us what you thought of the podcast. Tell us what you thought of the movie. How do you feel about what's going to happen next in Marvel? You can drop all that on the socials or right there in the comment section. And don't forget to check out thecomiccrush.com. All the links will be in the description. Bye, folks. We're out of here.
Bye.
Bye.